Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
Horror edition.
I was like, this is The Housewife of Horror? this is Halloween, Halloween.
They're burning all of the witches, even if you aren't one.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to my little, because she said she's going to listen to the witch episodes. So, hi. If you, like her, are really interested in the Salem witch trials and you feel like you're learning a lot or you're just listening to things you already knew about, tell other people to come listen. Our last episode was on Sarah and Dorcas Good, one of the first three accused witches in the Salem witch trial and the youngest accused witch in the Salem witch trials. And today we have our final episode of Housewives of Horror this year.
Mm-hmm.
So share it, like it, comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice things only.
Mm-hmm.
We like Chapel Roan cannot handle the heat.
No.
So
Nar. And tell us all the things that people do when they visit Salem.
yes.
All right, we do have some real-time true crime. One of them isn't necessarily new, but me and Mary just watched the Ruby Frankie documentary.
Yes.
So
good.
You should too. You should also watch it.
Yeah.
Um
Our first bonus episode.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have all the details that were included in the documentary. It's insane.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I was headed, is that like it seemed on YouTube like people were calling Ruby Frankie abusive far before she met Jodi Hildebrand and before it became what it ended up being. It all started when she's like refusing to bring her 6-year-old lunch to school, has her teenager sleeping in a beanbag for 7 months. You should go watch our bonus
I did know those things.
Although.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Oh.
I'm saying that's the things everyone knew.
Oh, yes. I also, it was very much giving like Lori Vallow.
Yes. So that is like very much how it ended up seeming, is that like her and Jodi are like this Lori and Chad Daybell team. Very
but
strange.
Lesbians.
So while we can't know how bad it was in the Frankie house before this, it didn't seem like it got this bad until Jodi entered the scene.
Yes.
It didn't seem in the videos like the children were emaciated. There weren't any visible wounds on them in the videos. In fact, when Kevin Frankie heard, he said, "What does emaciated mean?" And then they explained, and he's like, that doesn't even make any sense to me.
Yeah. I think like they certainly were thin, but I also think that like when you see like children who are thin accompanied by parents who are thin, like you think like, oh, they're thin people. Like it definitely wasn't like concerning. But then like when you kind of think back to like not allowing her 6-year-old to eat lunch, like
the seeds were planted
already.
But now in this documentary we do get a lot of like actual like body cam footage from the day that Jodi and Rudy Jodi and Ruby are arrested, and they find that these children had been starved and bound. Specifically, we had heard about like the saran wrap and duct tape on the child who ran for help on his ankles and wrists. I, silly me, literally said out loud, do you think they like were just nice enough to like put duct tape on them so that the handcuffs like didn't hurt them that bad? No. The answer is no. How dare I assume that these people had a moment of humanity? Silly me. No, they were inflicting wounds on these children. Then, while the wounds were open, putting cayenne pepper in them and then wrapping them up. And then probably still putting cuffs on them if we're supposed to believe that the cuffs are being used. So,
the size of that fucking house.
Yeah. It was like, as they were going through it, it was reminding me of those houses that people like pull up on Zillow and they're like, what happened here?
Yes.
Like, that's what it was giving. Was like
the last house our parents lived in, their basement.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was way worse than we ever could have thought.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something about the house, like what it reminded me of, but it's like that was insane.
It was like bunkery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like huge, like
yeah,
a compound.
Yeah. So
crazy.
Everyone should go watch that if you were interested in that case on Peacock. It's called Abused by Mom.
There's another one on Peacock about her, but I don't remember what it's called, and I didn't watch it.
Interesting.
I think it's called. I think it's just called. Peacock. Yeah, I think it's just called the Ruby Frankie scandal.
Oh, okay. And then another piece of real-time true crime that I saw today is that 20-year-old TikToker Mr. Prada has been arrested in connection with the murder of a 69-year-old therapist. Dr. Abraham was a therapist in Baton Rouge and had formerly been a priest. He was accused of molesting an 11-year-old boy in 2015, right when Mr. Prada, real name Terrion Thomas, would have been 11. The therapist died of blunt force trauma to the head, was wrapped in a tarp, and thrown into a ditch.
No.
We can wait, but I think the feeling right now is like,
good.
Okay.
Yeah. I was about to say, we rarely say this on this show, but good.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyway, on to the witchies. Are you ready?
Yes. Twitchy witchy.
Witchy witchy. All right. So, historians still debate the reality of the cases of affliction in the Massachusetts area in 1692 because it did seem that a large number of people were getting legitimately ill in New England in the 1690s. Now, is that just because it's the 1600s?
Right.
And people get sick? And then we're just kind of inflating how much it was and making it seem like it was more than normal? Or was it more than normal? Like in the 1690s versus the 1680s versus the 1700s? We don't really know. There's apparently some theories about like mold, but then like that doesn't play out for like all of them. So
also like more people were moving to the new world at that time.
Yeah. So whatever caused the afflictions, those who already had the idea of witches in their mind took it as an opportunity. So I would say the fact that we got to the witch part is almost entirely socially based, not based on mold.
No.
That's my theory. I'm putting it here, friends. So these young girls would come forward to their parents saying that they were ill. Like they would just be like, I don't feel good, or they would start having marks on them or convulsions or whatever would actually happen to them. But these parents had already heard about Tituba, and that when she signed her name in a book that there were already names in there, and they're like, who are these other 8 women? Now my daughter's sick, so is it one of them? And so these girls are being frightened by their parents. They're being punished basically into giving names. Like their parents are like, who's hurting you? I know it's somebody. And so it's really not a shock then that Tituba, an enslaved woman, was among the very first women to be named.
Mm-hmm.
Outsiders in society
Are you
were
talking? Are your story about Tituba now?
no.
Oh, okay.
Outsiders in society were obviously the most vulnerable. That didn't mean that like well-known and loved women didn't get accused, because they did. But
and men.
yes. But it seemed that those who people already didn't like were usually the first ones. One scholar specifically compared this to terrorists today, saying that many people in Salem, like, they basically knew that there are witches afflicting their children. And so they just needed to find out who they were. In other words, leading to a witch hunt. Or the witch hunt. Although the witch trials are most famously known from being from Salem, this story is going to happen in a town nearby. In 1692, in Andover, Massachusetts, Martha Carrier was the first person to be accused of witchcraft in Andover. Martha Allen was born around 1653 to two founding members of the town of Andover. When Martha met Thomas Carrier, he was 20 years her senior. He may have been attracted to her for her bold independence and strength, while it's possible she was intrigued by his height at a whopping 7'4". And trust me, friends, I tried to rebut this. I looked everywhere. I was like, there's no way that's true. It seems true. I cannot escape this fact.
She said, I'm going to make history.
She's Debbie Ryan, actually.
She said, I walked into that Andover town and I said, I want to make history.
I want to make history.
That's the tallest fucking man I've ever seen, and I'm going to marry him.
Yeah. Martha and Thomas fell in love and became pregnant before their marriage.
Uh-oh. That's why she's a witch.
When she got married, she was 7 months pregnant. There is a lot of speculation about Thomas's mysterious past, and while we will never know for sure, there is evidence to suggest that before he fled to the New World, he may have been a headsman in the execution of King Charles I in England. Good. That's pretty crazy. All right, Thomas. Also,
he was actually tall enough to be the guillotine himself.
We don't have a record to say that one of the headsmen was 7'4".
Yeah,
no one wrote that down.
He's the guillotine support, and then because like they can mechanize it, so he stood above and just boop.
Yeah. According to the New England Historic Genealogical Society, Martha's husband was born in Wales as Thomas Morgan. Even more interesting, the Carrier family believes that Thomas was around 108 years old when he died, carrying home a sack of grain.
The lore of this man!
This man is a superhero!
And like, aren't like tall people usually, don't they like die fast?
I know. I'm like, am I?
They're like, they have like
for more bone. For some reason, in my mind, men were shorter and people lived less long.
Right
in the 1600s. But
he's a time
traveler. Silly me. Maybe they were tall. I don't actually know, but
traveler.
So, as is true of these people in the 1600s, there are conflicting years of Thomas's birth, reported as either 1626, 1636, or 1650. But to be at least 20 years Martha's senior, it would seem to have to be one of the older or the earlier dates. Yeah, or else he's 3 years older.
Because otherwise she would be 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Then, oh, if born in 1626, he would have been 23 years old at the time of King Charles' execution in 1649, which seems plausible. By the time he arrived in New England, it would have been around the same time that others involved in King Charles' execution were running from England. And then this is when he changed his last name to Carrier. I'm carrying this secret with me.
Carrier? I hardly know her.
Okay. Martha and Thomas moved to Billerica, Massachusetts, which is about 30 miles from Salem and only 10 miles from Andover. Shortly after they arrived with their 5 children, the smallpox epidemic reached the Carrier family. Fortunately, all of them survived. But close by in Andover, Martha's family, the Allens, were not so lucky. Her father and 7 other family members died from smallpox. This made their neighbors in Billerica very suspicious. Well, that and the fact that Martha already had rubbed them the wrong way. She was outspoken and had some disagreements with them at times. People reported that after disagreements with Martha, someone in their family or their livestock would grow ill. And eventually, the town came together and asked them to leave, forcing them to move back to Andover. We really wanted y'all to die from smallpox, and since you didn't, please go. In Salem town, Martha's brother-in-law, Roger Toothaker, was a folk healer known for using counter magic. He was called out by afflicted girls in Salem village who had heard that he knew how to kill a witch with folk magic. Folk magic.
Folk mallet.
Folk malice.
Same thing.
How to kill a witch sounds so funny now. This attention led to his arrest on May 18th, 1692, and he was held in a Boston jail where he died on June 16th. He did not live in that jail very long. Happy birthday, Dad.
That's the actual day and year he was born.
1692.
Yes!
Yeah. Some wonder if...
And he's 7'4".
This guy isn't, though.
Oh.
Some wonder if Roger Toothaker is the person who first brought people's attention to the Carrier family in Andover. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing, so I'm like trying to figure out its brother-in-law. So I guess like one of her many siblings' husband?
Mm-hmm.
Because it wouldn't be Thomas Carrier's brother. Unless they all just took a bunch of random last names.
Well, I was going to say Toothaker is most certainly a made-up last name.
Sure, at some point. Aren't they all?
But can't you imagine, like, he is also involved in beheading the king, and he was like, oh, fuck, like, I gotta come up with the name, and he's like, Toothache.
Yeah, but this is not the guy that was involved in the beheading.
I know, but I'm saying, like, if they're brothers.
Oh, sure.
And maybe he was.
Sure, yeah, they did it together. Phoebe Chandler was the daughter of a local True.
Phoebe Chandler and Rachel Ross. And Monica Joseph.
Yeah. She was the daughter of a local inn owner who reported hearing Martha Carrier's voice while she was out running errands one day. Shortly after, Phoebe says that she fell ill. A group of afflicted girls said that they could see 13 ghosts surrounding Martha Carrier, which were believed to symbolize the 13 Andover residents that had died from smallpox. Furthering the belief that Martha, or at least the Carrier family, had brought smallpox to the town. Why did she want to kill 8 of her own family members, including her father? Can someone explain this to me? Tell me what he did. Yeah, honestly, Martha, whatever.
If she did, it's his fault.
Yeah, of course. Among these afflicted girls were Mary Walcott, Susanna Sheldon, Elizabeth Hubbard, and Ann Putnam Jr. The Putnams were a well-known family in Salem Village at the time. They had been there for 4 generations now. Thomas Putnam was a sergeant who fought in battles against indigenous people.
Nice.
It was just like, he's a beloved sergeant. And I'm like, what did he fight in? Oh,
Yeah.
That's what I thought. He was married to Ann Putnam Sr., and together they had 12 children. Well, I guess if we're living to 108, you could just keep doing it. The Putnams' fame and fortune in the area was dwindling in the 1690s as Thomas Putnam increased his support of the village minister, Samuel Parris. Often we don't realize that this was not something that like all people in the area agreed with, the witch stuff. So it was actually causing like a lot of divisiveness. Basically, there are like 2 sides of the political aisle on this. Thomas and Anne Sr., along with Reverend Samuel Parris, were fully convinced of the dangers of witchcraft and that it was rampant in their towns.
It's happening to their kids.
Or it's happening to their kids because they believe it. His
ding.
Yeah. Reverend Parris's sermons were near constant warnings of evil in their midst. And Senior would report seeing witches and ghosts, which has always boggled my mind that part of the belief around the witch trials has to include that like these people who are not witches can suddenly like see things that they're not supposed to see. I was reading something that was like they believed that like being afflicted made you able to see things by your afflictor only. And it's just like, man, were we reaching for some answers on why Miss Ann Senior, why can you see ghosts and no one else can? What does that mean, girly? So the Putnam house became a gathering place for people to speculate about the town's witches. And the Putnam family would go down in history as some of the most frequent and famous witch accusers of the Salem witch trial period. Even their family servant, Mercy Lewis, was often a central accuser, but more than anyone else, it was 12-year-old Ann Jr. who was making accusations and naming names.
The little bitch.
Ann Putnam Jr. eventually accused 18 people who were executed and 40 more who were jailed. And if we return to like where I started this episode, I mean, you could feel bad for Ann Jr. because she maybe just said, I'm sick. And her parents were like, say someone's name. And then fine, she was like, okay, I'll do it 58 times. As long as you'll leave me alone.
But if you think about like, because I think I said in my episode, like 35 people, I think, died.
Yeah.
But not all of them died in executions. So like over half of the people that were executed were accused by this one person.
What I read technically said that she accused 18 of the 20 who were executed. And I was like, only 20 were executed? That doesn't seem right. But maybe what you're saying...
It is. It was like... I think it was 20 were executed, but 35 died during the time of their trial. Some people died in...
Sure. Yeah, so 18 of 20 executions, that's a pretty whopping statistic, Miss Junior. An 18-year-old woman who had been accused, Mary Lacey Jr., said that she had seen Martha Carrier at witch meetings. In fact, she said she was there when Martha was promised the title Queen in Hell by the devil. Later, Cotton Mather would write in his book, The Wonders of the Invisible World, that Martha Carrier was the Queen in Hell and a rampant hag. Okay. Okay, Cotton. Get out of here. On May 31st, 1692, Martha Carrier was the first person to be arrested in Andover for these crimes. However, Andover would eventually become the town with the most accused witches. She was transported by John Ballard, the Andover constable, to Salem Village for examination. Martha always maintained her innocence, asserting that all of her accusers were liars. Carrier's own nephew, Alan Toothaker, and so by my deduction, I assume son of the folk healer Roger Toothaker, testified that she had bewitched him after he had an altercation with her son Richard. He claims that Richard pulled him to the ground by his hair, and when he rose to concede, he was struck down again with no power to stand. He says that he saw Martha leaving from his chest.
Ew.
What? He also claims that since Martha's arrest, he has had wounds from the war heal that were never supposed to heal and hadn't healed for the many years that Martha was free. Put her behind bars. Suddenly, I'm a new man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you show them to us?
Alan? I don't know if we were doing that on men the way we were on women. Checking for witch bites and things. 2 months later, in July, her two oldest sons, Richard and Andrew, respectively 18 and 15, were arrested and brought to Salem Village. They claimed their innocence until they were tortured into confessing. The teenage boys were reportedly tied from their necks to their heels. I don't know what that means.
I'm trying to figure out how you would get a tie, like a knot tied around a heel.
True.
I feel like it would slip off.
Ankles. Like, did they mean ankles? And I was like reading and people were like, it's a phrase. And I'm like, meaning what?
Yeah.
So what actually happened?
Right.
So whatever that means, sounds pretty bad. That's all I got. They were soon joined by their younger siblings, 10-year-old Thomas Jr. and 7-year-old Sarah. Each of the children was tortured so extensively that they not only testified against their mother, but also confessed to their own dealings in witchcraft. All of the children were brought to Salem Village by their constable, John Ballard. Sarah told the court that she had been a witch since she was 6, which is so cute because she's 7. So she's like, I don't know, a long time since I was 6. Yeah. Like, you can just like picture kids being like, I haven't done that since I was 3. And you're like, how old are you? 4.
I love when my kids say, when I was 7. And I'm like, no, you are 7. What?
She says she's been a witch since she was 6, and that it all started when her mother brought home a red book and she touched it. She says she was taught by her mom how to... This part's gonna make me laugh so hard. She was taught by her mom how to afflict other young girls by pinching them or sitting on them. That's not witchcraft. That's just annoying.
My mom taught me how to be a fucking nuisance.
My mom taught me how to be a bully. Sarah's hilarious.
Take me away.
Guilty as charged. Thomas told a similar story that his mom brought home a book and told him to touch it. In fact, she threatened that if he didn't, she would rip him to shreds. Thomas Jr. and Sarah both named a similar group of girls, saying that their mother instructed them to afflict Mary Walcott, Sarah Phelps, and Ann Putnam Jr. In the trial, Susanna Sheldon said that Martha would pinch and bite her and threatened to cut her throat if she didn't sign her book. She also cried out that she could see, quote, the black man, which in 1692 indicated the devil,
Mm-hmm.
and that he
Well,
was
I told in mine, that's who brought them the book, was
the
a
devil.
man dressed in all black.
Mm-hmm. Or
And in,
just black.
yeah. And in American Horror Story Coven, that's who brings the book.
A black man.
A black man in all black.
Yeah. So Susanna said that she could see him whispering in Martha's ear. Some adult neighbors also came forward to say that they had experienced illness or loss after disagreements with Martha. That's just called karma, guys. She was asked if she could. They asked her in court, "Can you look upon the afflicted girls without them writhing in pain?" She said, "I will not be doing that." Without her even looking upon them, though, the girls continued to have violent outbursts, saying that they could see the devil in her. And she said to the magistrates, "It is a shameful thing that you should mind these folks that are out of their wits. These people are lunatics. What
She
is
said,
going on here?"
"Stop. Stop feeding their frenzy."
Yeah. At the end of the Carrier trials, Martha remained the only family member who did not end up confessing. She was hanged on August 19th, 1692, and her children were finally freed. We do not know what was done with her remains. It is actually noted that throughout the witch trials, those who did not confess were often convicted and executed first. If the accused did confess, then they usually had more time before being tried, and sometimes they ended up not being executed at all. One historian raised the question then of why every woman didn't just confess then. Of course, in Martha's case, it could just be because she was strong-willed and refused to give a false confession. For many, though, lying was believed to be a mortal sin, so they would choose wrongful death over sacrificing their entrance to heaven. Accused who confessed, as we know, would also risk being coerced into naming other witches, which sounds to me like more lying. So, they didn't want to do that. Martha's husband, Thomas Carrier Sr., continued to seek retribution for his wife's wrongful death and the incarcerations of their children. In 1711, Martha Carrier's name was cleared of all charges. Great. That's great. And Thomas Carrier died in 1735, reportedly at the age of 108. Cool. In 1699, Thomas and Ann Putnam died of an unknown illness.
Good.
Little Miss Junior might be a witch.
Yep. Did they die with blood in their mouths?
Which left Ann Putnam Jr. to take care of her, if you recall, 11 siblings. In 1706...
What you get for being a cunt.
In 1706, 5 years before Martha's name would be cleared, Ann Jr. was encouraged by the new Salem village minister to stand beside him in front of their congregation while he read her apology out loud. She didn't read it. He did. It read, quote, "I desire to be humbled before God for that sad and humbling providence that befell my father's family in the year about 92. That I, then being in my childhood, should by such a providence of God be made an instrument for the accusing of several persons of a grievous crime, whereby their lives were taken away from them, whom now I have just grounds and good reason to believe they were innocent persons, and that it was a great delusion of Satan that deceived me in that sad time, whereby I justly fear I have been instrumental with others, though ignorantly and unwittingly, to bring upon myself and this land the guilt of innocent blood. Though what was said or done by me against any person, I can truly and uprightly say, before God and man, I did it not out of any anger, malice, or ill will to any person, for I had no such thing against one of them. But what I did was ignorantly being deluded by Satan, I desire to lie in the dust and to be humbled for it, in that I was a cause, with others, of so sad a calamity to them and their families, for which cause I desire to lie in the dust and sorrow and offense whose relations were taken away or accused. End quote. There ain't a bit of accountability in there, Miss
I
Nina.
didn't hear you say you were sorry at all.
She said, through no fault of my own, and with others. I swear there were others.
I did not. There were 9 people above me.
By this point, the same kind of guilt had spread to many in Salem and surrounding areas. People started to fear that actually they had been tempted by the devil into accusing and executing these women. They said, crap!
Said, oh my God, murder is bad.
I was so worried
I
about
might be
lying.
going to hell.
And now, yeah, I'm accessory to murder. Only accessory because it was the devil that did it and others.
And I was but a child.
Yeah, and I will lay in the dust. The court and the trial. I have no idea. She said, I desire to lie in the dust. I have given just cause of sorrow and offense. Yeah, a little. Okay, the court and the trials were ended. It was like this special kind of court that had been put in place just for these things. So that was ended. Massachusetts said, no mas. This is bad. Even though some people did still believe that witches were real, they acknowledged that killing innocent people wasn't worth it. And this one's for Mary for part 1. And they acknowledged that spectral evidence should not be enough to convict. They said, okay, we was wrong.
Yeah.
Centuries later, in 1999, Billerica, Massachusetts board unanimously voted to rescind the 1676 banishment of the Carrier family. They're dead.
Yeah.
No, they've been banished, whether you like it or not, Billerica.
Like, what did you think was going to happen?
What?
What was the reason?
Are there other carriers who like want to move in? They're like descendants.
You're actively upholding their banishment.
Sorry, it's on the books. Can't let you in. And it took till almost the turn of the century to 2000 for you to realize, like, we should, yeah, okay. Some people theorize that the Carrier family was targeted for political reasons. In Andover, there was a power struggle between the assistant minister and the senior minister. It seems that the Andover accusations often centered around the senior minister, Reverend Francis Dane himself, or founding families of Andover, which, if you recall, Martha's family is. And I guess they had to go for her because all her other family had died of smallpox. So, I don't know. Others think it could be related to women who have come into some power themselves. After the deaths of most of her family's men from smallpox, Martha stood to inherit the Allen property. However, it is said that in the grand scheme of things, this property was not like a large fortune. So probably not enough for them to like kill her for. It's probably more of just like they thought she had a bad attitude. If I am gonna drop my theories.
And she had sex before marriage.
Yes, of course. With a 7'4" man. They thought they're trying to make
With
devil
a giant
babies. They're doing some crazy breeding out here in Billerica.
They're very fearful. They're like, how tall will that child be?
Yeah. Scared.
He could take us all out.
Yeah. There is an independent film documentary that I've not been able to watch because it's not really showing anywhere. But it's called A Witch Story, and it was created by Martha Carrier's 11 times great granddaughter, which is cool. In it, someone said of the accused women, can you imagine to be alone in a dungeon, naked, surrounded by men, and you know that the only way out is to be burnt alive? Can you imagine that desperation? And that is where I end.
Okay.
This was very short. Thanks for hanging out with us. Unfortunately, we're obviously doing more like historical research on these than normal. And believe it or not, there's not a whole lot of accurate information on this. And I did read the actual transcripts from Martha Carrier's trial, and they make mostly no sense. So I did my best.
Yeah. Surprise. Historically, like, lie
Mhm.
from the 1600s doesn't make any sense
Mhm.
in writing. That's crazy.
But I beg of you
Stop
to
yawning.
go buy one of the shirts, the witchy shirts Mary designed. Specifically, the "We're the Daughters of the Witches You Could Not Burn" shirt is my favorite.
Yes.
But any of them, the one
Yeah.
Mary's wearing is great.
This isn't a Halloween one even, but
Yeah, but it's all spooky.
you get it.
But yeah, anything else? Any final thoughts, Mary, on the witch trials, the witches? Are witches real?
Yes.
In what way? How do they differ from? They don't just pinch and sit on people, I think. Is what I
No.
want the world to know about witches.
No, certainly not.
Do they eat children?
No.
Mhm.
Like Stevie Nicks type witches
Mhm.
is what I'm thinking
What
of.
would your familiar be?
Probably a dog. I love dogs. That little dog I'm trying to convince Sammy to get.
Mhm. I feel like mine would definitely probably be a white cat,
Mm-hmm.
but I like wish that it would be something more exotic, like a little like frog or something.
I would love like a little lizard.
Yeah. Can you like shrink down a Komodo dragon? And like,
Like a bearded dragon.
oh yeah, kind of. Yeah. That'd be cool.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.